Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Mikhil Innani, who is the managing director at Apollo Finvest, a white-labeled plug-and-play digital NVFC. Mikhil is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University and has been integral part of the success of Hotstar, FarmEasy, and Coupon Dunia. Hi Mikhil, welcome to ELI.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Michael, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely. So, yeah, firstly, I think you've done a good job telling people about my background, but maybe just I'll add a little bit more color. So, my background is that last 10 years really I've been in the entrepreneurial space, right? And it started off by once I graduated from CMU, I started my career by being one of the early team members and heading product at at Coupon Dunia. Basically, this is back in 2011. There, that's when I got my first exit. We got the company got acquired by Times Internet. Post that, me along with my co-founders, we started which is now India's largest online medicine delivery company with the name of FarmEasy. Once FarmEasy basically raised its Series B round, I exited, and I was one of the very very early team members, and I was heading growth and consumer product at Hotstar. And there really we built a team from the ground up, right? Really going from having less than like 10 to 15 people in the product and engineering team in house to going to over 200 people across the board, right? So that was a phenomenal journey. And obviously at that point in time, then uh, Hotstar got acquired, and Star as a whole got acquired by Disney, and that's when my entrepreneurial itch was acting up. And that's when me along with my co-founder Diksha, we basically took on Apollo Finvest. Apollo Finvest is of course um, a very interesting company. It's we like to describe it as AWS for digital lending. And as we go on, I'll talk a little bit more about what we do.
Okay. It has been a long journey, I see. Why don't you take us through your journey step by step? First, tell us your first day of entrepreneurship when you quit your job and started on your own. On your own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think to me at least personally, I think one of the most important stepping stones in a way for entrepreneurship was in a way the preparation I had before it, right? So as an example, when I went to CMU, like I was surrounded by very very entrepreneurial and inspiring folks, right? To be honest, right? I think education is something which you can very easily now get on the internet for free from very high quality sources. But I think going to a good school or having the right people around you obviously is very inspiring. And it not only helps you build a network at that point in time, but helps you build a network for life. And people who will constantly be inspiring you, right? Because you've shared an experience together, and that really binds you together, right? So that was something which was very important. After that as well, like when I basically joined Coupon Dunia, I think Coupon Dunia again, to me, it was like being a pseudo entrepreneur, right? Where you are basically a key team member, right? And you are looking after a few departments, but fundamentally, the pressure is on the entrepreneur always, right? Who at that point in time was Samir, right? So in many ways, like you could say that I got, the thrills of being an entrepreneur without having the risks, right? And or the stress, basically, right? So it was a great, couple of years to basically, with adult supervision, I would call it. You had the ability to, learn the ropes and see how to really build a company, right? And know basically what are some important things as you go ahead and build a business or go ahead and build a team, and various components of a startup, right? So I think these two were really really fundamental and important pillars for really shaping the next decade for me, right? And after that, of course, then came obviously companies like FarmEasy, which was a very typical, I would say, 0 to 100 kind of company, right? Where we started all the way from ground zero, right? As an example, when we started first day, I remember we literally started working off and started building that company from, my living room, right? And literally the first 2 weeks, we didn't even have an office. We, all of us were working uh, basically like day in, day out, literally staying together, right? For the first 2 weeks, I remember literally developers used to be, almost camping at my house where, we had to get a product out and we had to get consumer feedback immediately, right? So those 2 weeks were, of course, crazy. And after doing a lot of validations, etc., we kind of realized that, hey, this can be like a real market. And but one thing we really optimized for there was, going to market as fast as possible, right? And that's a trick which I think a lot of people should try and use, which is spend as less money as possible on actually building something. First, try to sell it, see if there is a market for it, get early indicators, and then really spend enough time, energy, bandwidth, money, everything on getting the product which the customers actually want, rather than assuming what they want and building the whole 9 yards before having something out there, right? So in many ways, it's a minimum viable product that you get out there. And you can do that with very little technology, right? With all of the technology which is available today. So that was pretty important. I think, once we realized there was tremendous product market fit with FarmEasy, we obviously scaled that company, pretty well. And obviously right now also, it's one of the um, I would say stalwart companies in the medicine delivery space in India. And really after that, I got the opportunity of a lifetime to work in and collaborate with with a company like Hotstar, which was back then, I remember it was so funny. It was pretty attractive, back then. Like I was, talking to, Ajit and Barun, like Ajit, who's now, CEO of, Facebook India. But at that point in time, he was, the CEO for Hotstar. And, we had pretty, ambitious plans, right? And there actually, a lot of people don't know this, but initially, the tech of Hotstar was completely actually outsourced to Accenture, right? And the number one mandate I had really at that point in time was actually building the whole tech team in house,
Okay.
you know uh, and like everybody knew, basically you can't build $1 billion tech company without an internal tech team, right? So they really told me in one line that recreate the magic you've done at at FarmEasy, and upon there, but this time you can just go and hire the dream team, because we have the firepower and the capital to do so. So that was a very, very different experience, right? Because I mean, like building a company from 0 to 10, like which is something like FarmEasy was. And Hotstar was something like taking something which had like 600 million monthly active users, which had some degree of product market fit, and we really needed to scale. Like, so we were at 600 million monthly actives, and our ambition was obviously to hit 100 million. But obviously in the 2 odd years, 2 3 years or whatever I was there, we hit 300 million, right? So we obviously surpassed everybody's expectations. But really there, it was a very different experience, because when you're in a company which is 10 to 100 kind of situation, you can't basically be doing everything yourself. The most important thing over there is the difference between Hotstar and FarmEasy was, in FarmEasy you could drive everything from a founder point of view. Like the founder can be in charge, he can be everywhere, because there's enough firepower with the founder himself to run the company, pretty much, uh, with his own will in a way, right? But when you're in a very, very large company like uh, where Hotstar was going, it was impossible for me to do something like that. So I think the first thing I did over there was build a team, right? And I build a team of leaders who were in a way like, you can call them in a way my pseudo co-founders, right? In fact, like that used to be my hiring pitch, right? So when I hired, as an example, when I got on board like Akash, who's the current CTO at Hotstar, or back then we had a few 3 4 key hires, right? Even we hired Rinky at that point in time, who was heading tech recruitment for us. So every key hire that you make, right, in a way, that part of the responsibility you kind of hand off to them, and they have to do a phenomenal job, because that has to stop being your responsibility and your headache, because there are too many things to take care of at that point in time, right? So the approach has to be very top down driven. So that was obviously the experience with Hotstar. That's how we were able to scale, right? Because you find people which can help you scale the company, right? um, we were able to do obviously a fantastic job. Then Disney came in, the Mickey Mouse company, and they obviously gave us a phenomenal exit, right? That was something which, it felt like a really, really strong milestone, uh, in terms of, where the company was and the kind of exit that we got. And that's where, my entrepreneurial nature was also acting up. I wanted to, in a way, like nothing replaces having your own company, right? It's very, very different things. Once when you're in a company, you're building everything, and this is, odds are really like, I mean, I should be honest, right? I mean, if you're a, if you're a, if somebody is in the tech space and you're looking for something which is at, true scale, right? I don't think there's a company which competes with Hotstar even today, right, in India. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. It's something where, your learning will be exponential. To me, the opportunity really was like, I look for milestones, and that was a huge milestone where, we got acquired by Disney, and I really wanted to build my own company. And, that's where, I started my entrepreneurial journey all over again with, with Apollo, and obviously got started building it with my co-founder, Diksha there.
Okay. Okay. So a couple of questions around what we spoke so far. First thing I'd like to ask you, what does exit mean to an entrepreneur? I mean, I understand the technicalities of exit, but what role does it play in an entrepreneur's life?
I think it's, to be honest, I mean, honestly, at least now, the way I think about, it's kind of a bittersweet moment, right? To be very, very honest, like now that I've been in this space for like 10 years, the way I think about exits is it's bittersweet, because obviously it's sweet because, there are commercial implications, right? It's a lot of blood, sweat, and, thunder that you put into something. So it's finally like, getting, a large commercial outcome out of things, because, realistically, like, I always tell this to people, right? If you're doing entrepreneurship to just earn money, there are much easier ways to make money in life, right? Like, I think, you should do entrepreneurship because you're genuinely passionate about something, because there are just so many ups and downs that, the downs are more often than the ups, right? So it's not something that you can just blindly do thinking, this is the way I'll make money, right? Because after one point in time, you'll be like, screw this, I'll just do a job. And in the short term, to be honest, like, there's a very, very high likelihood that, unless your startup actually succeeds, you'll actually realistically make more money while doing a job. Like, that's the cold hard truth, right? Because even if you get an exit, firstly, obviously the exits goes to, investors if you have them, and then, the money comes to you, right? Depending on obviously how the structure is, kind of set up. So overall, like, that's something you have to be very cognizant of as a founder, right? You have to know the economics behind what you're doing, because ultimately, like, I always tell people that, hey, like, I mean, if it's a possibility of you just building a profitable business without taking and raising external capital, do that till how much ever time you can, because, maybe it takes you a year or two to even realize whether you need external capital, right? Because if you can really build a profitable business on your own, and it's, fairly profitable, why do you even need external investors to, mess your stuff up, right? Like, unless they're really adding value, which, can be questionable sometimes. So that's something you have to be important about. I think it's bitter also because of the fact that, you know because, doing a company is all consuming, right? Like, it's like having a baby, right? So, sometimes, even if you're getting a fantastic exit, it's a bitter moment, because you're like, what do I even do after this, right? Because, when you're doing your own company, like, successful founders barely think about anything else, right? Like, for me, as an example, like, right now Apollo is the only thing I do. Like, I don't know anything other than Apollo. Like, if tomorrow, if I had to do something else, like, it would just be like, where do you even start, right? Like, I mean, I can't even think of something else, right? Because that's what you do 24/7. So, despite, obviously, even if you get a successful exit, right, sometimes it's bitter, because, in the end of the day, yeah, you get the money in the bank, that feels obviously nice, but ultimately, you start thinking, okay, what do I do now? Right? Like, I mean, like, this is the only thing I do. I did this 24/7. Like, I used to dream about this when I'm sleeping, but, now I'm no longer basically actively playing a part over there. So it's, there is a certain degree of, bitterness in that moment also. But I think it's a part of basically your entrepreneurial journey, right? I mean, you have to deal with it. This is just something which you have to kind of learn to deal with.
Okay. Uh, since you mentioned that you do Apollo 24/7, at least that is what you are doing right now. I'd like to ask you, uh, what is more important for an entrepreneur? Is it focus or is it the ability to multitask?
I think honestly, focus, right? Like, I mean, to me, like, the whole narrative around, like, I mean, this whole narrative around startups being chaotic and, have to do 10 things at the same point in time. I think that's highly overvalued. I mean, I think it's the wrong approach to doing startups, right? I think the I keep saying this, but I think winners basically do things in a much more sensible, scalable, and process driven manner. Startups are basically process driven experimentation, right? It's not random, right? If you do things randomly, then you're bound to fail. So, like, to me, it's very important when you're doing a startup to have incredible amount of focus, not only for the entrepreneur but for the entire team. Like, in fact, some of the principles that we followed at FarmEasy to Hotstar to even now, and this you can actually do this, whether it's a startup or whether it's a very large company, is that the entire company should know what is the KPI you are chasing, at that given point in time. And this KPI can keep changing if you want every quarter, every year, whatever frequency you want. But at any given point in time, the whole company must know what is the KPI that we are optimizing for, right? Because this really unites the company and everybody starts thinking in a very focused manner that this is the direction, right? If you multitask too much, and depends on your definition of multitasking, if you try to do too many things at the same point in time, a startup just can't function like that, right? Because you don't have the manpower, focus, energy, capital to be able to multitask, right? In fact, like, most startups succeed because they actually find something incredibly narrow, focused niche. They do that really well. This is how they acquire their first set of customers who are their loyal customers, and then over a period of time, you can, once you solve that particular use case very deeply, very well, then you can start solving for adjacent use cases, which makes a lot more sense to expand your mind share with the customer, right? You can't typically do 10 things at the same point in time, because what will end up happening is that you will be sucky at all 10 things, right? And when you're crappy at all 10 things, ultimately what will happen is you will be hemorrhaging customers, because your ultimately your lifetime value of the customers will be very poor. The churn of customers will be very high. You rather have a very narrow focused thing that you're doing, which has a very limited audience base, because once that audience base discovers your product, it solves the exact itch that it has, for your for them, right? And they'll be like, oh my god, this is the exact product that I wanted. I'm a loyal customer, right? Because there's nobody else solving it so well like you. Even though you're solving something extremely narrow, you have very loyal customers who will be paying customers who will stay with you, right? And that early traction and that early base is so important, because then once you have loyal customers, then slowly you kind of replicate it, right? You solve a very narrow niche, and then you basically go forward or you go backwards in the lifetime value of the customer, and in the life cycle of a customer in their journey, to basically solve more use cases for them, and they will have loyalty with that central use case, and that's how they will continue using your product either backwards or forward as you go ahead in your product life cycle journey.
Okay. Mikhil, I would like to understand a little bit about the initial days of FarmEasy, because that is one of the, in fact, the only journey when you had no proper backing. How do you define the initial days of a FarmEasy?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, farm easy was something where we basically, like, we did the following things, right? Basically, right? I think one of the most important things which worked in FarmEasy's benefit was, that chemistry of the team, right? Because basically, when I, started FarmEasy, like, I was employee number 4 at Coupon Dunia, and employee number 5, 6, 7, and 8 from Coupon Dunia basically joined us day zero at FarmEasy as well, right? And in many ways that formed a little bit of an unfair advantage for us, because the team chemistry was so good that we could work very fast, right? And working fast in the right direction in a startup is magical, right? Because it builds momentum, right? So as an example, like what we were able to do at FarmEasy in the early days was really, really magical because, like I'll give you an example, right? So when we had to launch the app, right? Like this is how quick we were. We launched the first app of FarmEasy in like 24 hours. And you know why? Because our app basically was probably, it was 2 pages, right? The app, the first page of the app, right, was literally like a button, which was like a big, big button, which was a camera button, right? And on the top, it was written that please take a photo of your prescription. We will deliver medicines at 20% discount. Like this is the home page, right? It was like this ugly pink color, and text literally written in big font with one button. You, as a user, right? The only things we took from you is you took one photo, not even more, because we didn't have time to build any functionality of a database or anything. You took one photo, and on the next page, we didn't even take your phone number, address, nothing. We only took your phone number. We didn't take your name. We didn't take your address. We didn't take anything because we wanted to create the most lightweight experience as possible, and we wanted to launch it, right? Because see, when we started FarmEasy, I mean, we were not convinced that anybody would order medicines online, right? Everybody we spoke to, they were like, you want to sell drugs online? Like that sounds like a bad idea, right? Because of the regulations, because when people generally are sick, people will just go down and take a crocin, right? If you have fever, right? And these all are valid concerns, right? So we were like, let's do one thing. Let's be extremely frugal in this process, right? So we literally launched an app with just 2 pages on it, right? And you know, we could not even, and which is a good thing actually now, and I recommend this to all startups. Initially, we could not even do Google and Facebook ads to basically get customers because you can't basically promote online. You can't do online ads to sell drugs for obvious reasons, right? So we had to, the only way to do marketing was basically literally messaging people that we knew on WhatsApp, right? So we were one of those, people who were flooding WhatsApp with these forwards, basically, right? On, hey, like order medicines, this is the link, and get 20% discount, because we wanted to see, will anybody even order, right? And what basically happened was magical, right? Because we started realizing that yes, orders are coming in, and we started getting like 2-3 orders a day. And the way we were literally delivering these orders was, one of my co-founders were actually literally going to a pharmaceutical shop, buying the medicines, and himself going in a car to actually do the delivery himself, because we had nobody else, right? And basically this kind of, we kept doing this kind of marketing, right, through WhatsApp. And we reached the second or third week where we started, legitimately getting about 10 orders a day. And obviously this all sounds really tiny, but for us it was so exciting, right? Like, I mean, we spent zero money, like in terms of marketing, but we're organically getting 10 orders a day. That means this was a product which there was a use case of. Then we started doing an analysis on, okay, what are people ordering, right? Because orders to are, but what are people ordering, like what do people like? And that's when we kind of realized that, by the way, like less than 1% of our orders were actually for like things like crocin and you know like cough medicine and things like that, right? 99% of our orders were for like chronic illnesses like high blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes and things like that. That's what people were calling for. And that's when it struck us that actually our target audience should be people who have chronic illnesses, because that's a repeat customer. Like, unfortunately, if you have diabetes, unfortunately, if you have high blood pressure, you want to have it for the rest of your life, right? So if we acquire that customer and we give him a good experience by which he can manage his problem really well on our app, he's going to be a repeat customer every month. So let's focus our energies towards actually only doing that. you know so this is how we actually narrowed down our scope further, saying, what, that 1% we don't want only, because we don't have the time to serve that audience, and we know it's going to be, there's no margin also, by the way, in that business, right? Croson, there's no margin. Like, it's a 2 rupee thing or 10 rupee thing, or if you deliver it, it doesn't make sense only. So we literally pivoted to making it very, very like, and this pivot basically happened in what, 3 weeks, right? Just 3 weeks into the company, we were like, what, we're shutting already one part of it down, only focused on, hardcore chronic illnesses, right? And this is how basically the entire journey of the company went, right? Like, we focused on basically making sure that the app was perfect for managing your, chronic illnesses like high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, things like that, right? Where you could depend on FarmEasy to deliver your medicines every single month. If you wanted to do tests, then in the future we also added, doing path lab tests obviously on FarmEasy, because again this suited this audience who wanted to get regular checkups done. Then also another thing which was very important to people was getting reminders about what is the medicine and when I should have it. So we built reminders into the app. Another thing which was very important and we found out was that typically when people get medicines delivered, they actually Google the medicine's name and they see the ingredients, right? And this was a unique insight that we were getting after talking to our power customers. That typically, what do you do, right? What do you do before downloading our app and ordering on ordering on FarmEasy? How do you exactly order on FarmEasy? And third, what do you do after ordering, right? So one very common thing which came out is, like when we get the prescription, we can't read it because only the doctor understands the doctor's handwriting and the chemist understands. It's like written in code words almost. So this is the reason why, and also we were incredibly lazy, that we wanted to build something which was super easy to use, and we didn't want to build like an e-commerce website, right, with all of the products listed, because we didn't even have the entire database with us. So imagine, that's why, to short circuit this entire thing, we just said, you know what, don't use this like a normal e-commerce website where you just add to cart. There's no concept of cart. You just take a photo of the prescription, that's it, right? So that was a unique insight that we got by talking to the customers, where, listen, I don't know what the medicine is, I just know I have a prescription, right? So just take a photo of the prescription and place the order. After you place the order, what is it that you do? Everybody usually Googles, when they check the expiry, they'll also check, okay, isme ingredients kya hote hai? Is this safe? What are the side effects? They start Googling. So you're like, you know what, instead of Googling, we'll build this dictionary into the app itself. So we built a medicine dictionary into the app. So this is how we started thinking that, right from backwards, before people place an order, to how do they think about placing an order, to what do they do after placing the order, right? We wanted to capture the entire value chain of the customer slowly onto the app. And this is not something that we did day zero, right? We took almost 2 years to cover the entire life cycle. But you have to go as slow as possible, because it's very important that you solve one use case really deep and then only go into another use case, right? You can't become jack of all trades, because what will end up happening is a smarter startup will come. They will realize that your core product is actually medicine ordering. Like, core is not this medicine dictionary, core is not this photo of prescription, right? Core is just ordering medicine and delivering it on time. So you need to crack that extremely well before you think of all of these other things that you get into.
Okay. Mikhil, you had strong reservations about building in-house team when you joined Hotstar. Probably you would have learned this at your previous experiences. Can you tell us? And when I ask this, I ask on behalf of other entrepreneurs who are building some tech-enabled products. Can you tell us why it is crucial to build tech in-house?
Yeah, so honestly, like, I mean, fundamentally, here's what I think about it, right? Like, I mean, see, very honestly speaking, here's the way I think about, tech products in general when you're building, right? So when you're building tech, right, it's a very different thing. There are multiple ways in which you can outsource tech, right? So as an example, let me give you good examples and bad examples, right? So good examples of actually outsourcing tech, right, is like, I'll give you an example at Hotstar or FarmEasy, right? Like, we use CleverTap, right, which is the company to basically do push notifications for us, right, in both these companies. Now that's a great example of, in a way, quote unquote, outsourcing tech, because that's a product. CleverTap is a product which is used by obviously many popular companies, and that's their job, right, to create a really great software as a service which makes the experience great for everybody else. And it's like, it's something which you can outsource, right? And Hotstar is a video company, and FarmEasy is a medicine delivery company. We are not a push notifications company, right? Like, that's not what we do. So that's a great example of outsourcing. Now I'll give you a bad example of outsourcing, right? A bad example of outsourcing is, if I am a video delivery company, right, or I'm a, like I was at Hotstar as an example, you can't outsource the Hotstar app, right? Which is basically your way to talk to the customer to, to an outside agency like Accenture, because basically, that is core to you, right? Like you are a video delivery company, you're a video streaming company, right? The video streaming better be done by you, because that's core. That's going to have long term importance in your company. So you have to identify, are there products out there which are world class? And it's a build versus buy question, right? I am never a fan of outsourcing stuff when it becomes into, like, I'm outsourcing my entire tech team, and that person is basically doesn't have a core product, but he's just custom building everything for you. That's a very disastrous consequences to have, because then the alignment is very different, right? Because then the opposite person is just trying to extract as much money as they can out of you, and being in a way our outsourced tech team. So you can't outsource a tech team. You can take off the shelf products like a Mixpanel, like a Clever Tap, like Google Analytics. These are all world class products. These are products which are used across the industry. They solve a very specific problem. Unless you're a video, unless you're a notifications company, or unless you're an analytics company, you should take all of these amazing products which are out there, right? But your core offering, right? As an example, in the fintech space, I always tell people that, what, the app that you're using to communicate and to basically give out the loans, that better be built by you, because the UX, the design, you know things like that you want to be in control of, right? But at the same point in time, in the fintech space, like the loan management system, that is something which you can easily like pick up, something which is world class already, right? Because including what Apollo, I mean, shameless bias over here, but basically Apollo, we ourselves offer Sonic, right? Which is something which is used by 15-20 fintechs today already, right? And it's something which is like a very popular gold standard way of managing loans. That's something which is an obvious thing to outsource, because your goal as a lending company is to do a great algorithm to identify borrowers, is to find a really smart way of acquiring customers, doing a good algorithm to identify good borrowers, and finally doing collections really well. Your goal as a lending company is not to have a very fancy loan management system. Loan management system is a means to an end, right? It's just like a CRM, right? So these are very standard, I would say world class tools which are available, which are the industry standards. Use what's available. But what is core to you, right? As an example, if you're a fintech, you can't outsource credit underwriting, right? If you outsource credit underwriting, then that's core to you, right? Ultimately, as a fintech, you should be good at identifying who to give a loan to, right? If you're not good at that, then what are you even, right? So you have to identify what is your superpower, as a company, and what do you stand for, right? At FarmEasy, as an example, it's very important. What was important for us is making sure we acquire medicines and deliver them on time. So the entire distribution, distribution arm, right, and warehousing, keeping medicines in stock, analytics on that we couldn't outsource, because that's the secret sauce, right? That's most important thing, is we need to make sure our deliveries happen on time, and we need to have the right inventory. Those are things you cannot outsource, right? The integration you have with the uh, mom and pop pharma, delivery, uh, chemists, right? You can't outsource that, because that's something which is proprietary, right? There is no other software which can build it as custom that you want to do it, right? But at the same point in time, push notifications, of course you want to outsource. Analytics on your app, of course you want to outsource, right? Because there are world class products out there. So it's really really important for you to very smartly make these choices, because you want to make sure that you are focused on the right problem and not reinventing the wheel when a world class product already exists. Like, the goal of a tech company is not to build just for the sake of building. And one of the biggest problems I have seen, while I always say this, that build a lot of your tech in-house, you have to be very guarded towards the engineer's bias that most founders have. you know Out of my last 10 years of being in this space, one thing I've realized is most entrepreneurs, right, are very comfortable building, but they're very very bad at sales, right? Because sales is all about getting rejected like 99 times out of 100, right? Or probably 90 times out of 100 you're going to hear a no. And no, like, as humans, we don't like hearing no. It makes us feel bad, right? So what we do is we just go into our shell, and we rather build, because when you're building, you're making the decision, and in a way you're patting your own back. Because when you build something, you're only going to be like, oh, this is so cool. But it doesn't matter whether it is so cool or it is so bad, right? Because ultimately only thing which matters is doing sales. So this is where it's very important for you to identify the right stuff to build versus the right stuff to buy. And you have to be very clear what is the end goal. Right? The end goal is to make money. Right. So ultimately optimize towards that and make the right decisions which gets to your end goal that much more faster.
Got it. Mikhil, last two questions I have. Uh, I would like to understand what are the challenges you have faced as an entrepreneur throughout your journey, and uh, what are the learnings you have got from those challenges?
Oh yeah, I mean, I could just go on and on, but I think, fundamentally, if I had to, tell you in one line, I would just be like, the following things are incredibly important, right? Number one is, make sure that, you have A plus co-founders, right? Like co-founders who you blindly trust, because the number one reason startups fail is not because of competition, it's because of, they themselves burst, right? And usually they burst because of, founder conflict, right? Because one founder wants to head in one direction, the other founder wants to head in some other direction, and roles are not very clearly defined, and there's a lot of ego clashes, and all of this nonsense basically ends up happening. So it's, kindergarten stuff which actually screws up a very, very promising startup, right? So make sure you have a plus founding team, right, where you actually trust each other blindly, right? Ideally, have some working experience together, right, where you have worked on some projects together, so you kind of know how the working relationship is going to be, rather than any other kind of relationship. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, etc. you know it's not necessarily, true, that your friendship and your, family relations translate into a good working, relationship. So it's very important to get a plus, co-founding team together where the chemistry has to be fantastic. you know the next thing I would tell you is that, get a plus team. And what I mean by an A plus team is, a lot of people don't know how to do hiring properly. When you're hiring properly, the first thing you need to dip into is your own network to make your first 5 or 10 hires, or the key hires in your company, have to be from within your network or within your network's network. So 1 degree of connection, or up to 2 degrees of connection. Like anything beyond that, no, they're not trustable. Right? I'm not saying they'll be bad, but they're not trustable day zero. Right? So dip into your network, and a lot of people think it's difficult, but it's not that difficult. you know Ask for introductions. Ask the people that you respect, right, or you think or you've enjoyed working with. Ask them for recommendations. And it's not rocket science, right? If you go and ask, find out, literally ask your entire co-founding team to name the 10 best people they've worked with in their career, and try and hire them. If not them, ask them for recommendations. And out of that list, try and get those people on board, because in the first 4 or 5 people you get in your company, you can't take risks, because you need to have the right alignment in terms of chemistry. Because if you have high chemistry, you can build anything and move very fast. Whereas most of the startups, they end up hiring random people who they have not worked with before, and then they have to recreate that chemistry, right? So which may happen, which may not happen, right? So you want to just avoid as much risk as possible when building the core team by doing this. Right? Now, the third and most important thing I would tell every startup is to know in their mind, basically, that this thing is going to take time, right? Like, I've seen so many people basically just start something, and 3 4 months it's not working. you know I need to basically pivot, right? I need to do something else, or they get restless, like, I need to raise funding, or why are customers not coming? I mean, you have to understand that building a company takes a lot of time and effort, and, like, you have to be patient. Only the winners are always patient. There is nobody who has overnight success. And don't benchmark yourself against somebody else's life, because fundamentally what they want out of their life and their startup is maybe totally different than what you want. So don't go under this FOMO thing, and don't go after, like, are your competitors, raising this much money, and ultimately all that doesn't matter. The only thing which matters is, where are you in your journey, right? Are you moving in the right direction? And that's very important. Moving in the right direction versus just moving fast. These are two very different things, right? So I think you have to have the discipline of being very patient. Take your time, Like, to me, every startup I've done, literally, like I've done FarmEasy, Hotstar, and even Apollo now, every place, the first 1 year was honestly just about discovery. Like, I did not know what we were building in the first year, like the true meaning of what we were building, right? Or what the potential can be. It was just trying to head in one direction. We just knew, like I just knew in FarmEasy, we are in the healthcare space and we are just doing something in medicine delivery. In Hotstar, we just knew that we are in the video OTT space. That's it, right? In Apollo, in the first 1 year, we just knew we are in the digital lending space. But what exactly, where do you fit in the ecosystem, right? Where can you really create an unfair advantage? I didn't know that. And that comes only after 1 year of, in a way, doing a PhD in that sector to know where the gaps are, right? Finally, one last thing I would say is that before you start any company, you know, find entrepreneurs who are already doing similar companies in that space, whether it's the same country or it's worldwide, and talk to them and understand what is working and what is not working. This whole concept of keeping companies stealth and secretly doing something, it's all bullshit. Because nobody cares about your company, you're too small. Nobody wants if somebody wants to copy you, like, I mean, if your idea literally or your startup fails because somebody copied you, like, I think you have very, very big problems in life. Because startups are about implementation, ideas are dime a dozen, right? So if I like whenever I do a startup, I talk to as many people who will take my call. Like, literally, when we entered the fintech space, like me and Diksha, I think in the first 6 months, we must have spoken to at least 50 fintech founders, right? Or if probably not more, right? We reached out to every fintech founder because we wanted to understand problems kya hai, what is the issues you all are having, and what is working. Because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? I rather learn from somebody else's experience. And see, founders know they don't waste time. Everybody will be very blunt. Because they are not going to talk to you for 1 hour. They will talk to you for maximum half an hour. In that half an hour, now they'll tell you full bluntly, this is what's happening, this is not what's happening. And it's like fully information packed. And make notes. See what are the common patterns. If you want to build a B2B company, solve their problems. You have ready-made customers. If you're wanting to start a company like them, then know these problems exist and you better have an answer to solve these problems. Otherwise, you're not building something differentiated. But this is the most common hack to do, that talk to all of your competitors, because mostly, you will think of them as competitors, but that's the very dumb thing to do, because the market is only so small. There is no competition. All of you guys are trying to create a market, right? So don't think of anybody as your competition. Nobody's your competition. Everybody's here is just trying to learn and trying to create a market. When the market is very, very big, when you're a Flipkart or Amazon, then you can obviously be like, oh, I can't talk to my competitor, because yeah, they will think of you as competition. Right now, when you call people up, if people think of you as competition, they are also stupid, and even you're stupid of thinking of them as competition. So
Okay.
yeah, these are some things to keep in mind.
Yep. Very interesting. Just one last question and then we'll wrap up. How would you suggest someone who is just like you 10 years back to start their journey as an entrepreneur?
I mean, I would definitely tell people that, what was instrumental for me is two things. One is find a startup, a good startup to work in. And the definition of a good startup is the following. One, find an entrepreneur that you really respect and you want to work with because you're learning from them. Second is very, very important to see the team around you, that you're basically, going to be joining. Because if the entrepreneur is great, they will teach you how to be a good entrepreneur. You will learn, skills from them. Second is if the team is great, you are basically making connections which will come in your use 10 years down the line. Because when you want to do your own startup, right, you can go and hire these same people, or through them, you can hire more people. Or maybe you will even do partnerships with them because they will be somebody good at some other company, right? So these two things are extremely critical. Like, the biggest mistake I think people end up doing, is that they optimize for making money, right? If you optimize in the start of your career to make money, that means you will be basically in a rat race. And probably, like, even when you're 35, 40 years of age, all your decisions will be based on money. right? And if you are 35 and or 40 and all of your decisions are based on money, right? I mean, I don't think you want that life ideally, right? Ideally, you want to have a life where you are able to make decisions based on your passion, based on who you enjoy working with, based on problems you would love to solve, right? That's a very fulfilling life, right? Because if every time you're yet optimizing for money, sometimes you'll just optimize for money, but you'll basically be very dissatisfied working on crappy stuff. So the best thing I would tell a person that, two things: make sure you associate and connect with the founder, like, because, and this doesn't matter whether you're an intern, whether you're a senior employee, whether you're the first employee, you know, right from an intern to like the most senior employee, you need to make sure that the founder, right? Because in a startup, you're not joining a startup, you're joining a founder. Remember one thing: the company it may have raised $10 million from Sequoia, or it may have raised nothing. Ultimately, all that doesn't matter because the company can fail in 6 months, right? So you better know that those 6 months are worth spending because that founder was sensible. And second is the team around the founder is really sensible, and you would like working with them, and you would form good relations with them, and that would be helpful over the next decade of your life. That's how I would benchmark it.
Okay. On that note, I'd like to close this session. It has been a long conversation and insightful one. Mikhil, thanks for your time and our best wishes for all the ventures you'll build. I am sure you'll build many um, in coming days. Listeners, you can follow Mikhil on LinkedIn by typing Mikhil Innani. That is it for today's episode. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to ELI.